When we ask what is the interval between two notes, all we are asking is what is the distance between two notes. As we get into more complicated intervals later in the semester, we're going to lose sight of that, but I'll keep reminding us of this. The word interval is simply asking us what is the distance between two notes. And I want to continue looking at the intervals that we find in the melody of Over the Rainbow. But before we do that, I just want to tell you about a couple of quirky things about the way that we talk about intervals. You'll notice the first interval in Over the Rainbow, we go up 8 notes. And then we go down 2 notes. And then we go down 3 notes. And then up 2, up 2, up 2, and up 2. When we talk about intervals, traditionally, we don't use regular numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We use what are called the ordinal numbers, those numbers that end in like ND or RD or TH. So instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we say 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So instead of going up 2, we say we go up a second. Instead of going down 3, we say that we go down a third. And that's true for most intervals except for 2 intervals. 2 intervals have special names that we use. One of those is the interval of 8. And we don't call the interval of 8th an eighth. We call it, we actually know this name already, but this is sort of a more precise way of thinking about it. The interval of the 8th is known as the octave. We learned about the octave in the very, very first video that we had, way back in the first day of class. So we call the 8th, we never call it the 8th, we call it the octave. And the interval of 1, we never call that a first, we call that a unison. So the intervals that we have up to the distance of 8 notes are known as the unison, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the octave. So let's go back to Over the Rainbow and continue looking at the intervals. So now that we know sort of this way that we talk about intervals, we know that we start with, we start on a C, we jump up an octave, go down a second, go down a third, up a second, up a second, up a second, and we end on the C. So let's keep going. To go from the C that is at the end of the second measure to the next measure, we're going to go down from C to C. And again, if I go down to my letter names in the bottom here, going from C to C, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes down. We go the interval of an octave down. Then from C to A, we go up from C to A. That is the interval of a sixth, because we go C, 1, D2, E, 3, F4, G5, A6, up the interval of a sixth. Then from A down to G, that is the interval of a second. We go a second down. Then from G, we go down to an A. And since this is a little bit of a longer interval, let's actually go back to our letters at the bottom here. We're going from G down to A, and this is the A that starts the beginning of the second line. So we go G1, F2, E3, D4, C5, B6, and A7. So we're going down from the G to the A, the interval of a seventh. Then we go up the interval of a sixth, A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, F6. Then down the interval of a second. down the interval of a third, up the interval of a second, up the interval of a second, up the interval of a second, lots of seconds here, down the interval of a third, down a third, up a second, up a second, up a second, and down a third. Let me start from the end, or from the beginning of the second line. Up a sixth, down a second, down a third, up a second, up a second, up a second, up a second, down a third, down a third, up a second, up a second, up a second, down a third. Now, this is a very precise and detailed way of thinking of the distance that we travel, both in letter name and in direction, from one note to the other. But notice this gives us a really precise map of the shape of the melody. In a certain way, the intervals and the direction of those intervals of a melody are really the DNA of the melody. In the next video, I want to alert you to one thing that's going to be a recurring problem for us throughout the semester, and that is a counting problem we have when we deal with intervals. So in the next video, we will talk about the counting problem.